Hello everyone, it is time for white pieces, hopefully. So far we have played 2 Botvinnik, 2 Viennas, so we are going to start again with the Botvinnik, just to get it out of the way. The Wi-Fi is not yet ready, so we need to keep on trying until it is. The display is really nice. Maybe you noticed that one of my first few games I was still playing with a cover on it. So the display is absolutely love. So we press play and hope we are getting white pieces so we don't have to turn around the board. I believe it's pretty annoying for some of you if I have to stand up and turn around the board. I don't want to edit these videos too much. So we are playing, or we are attempting to play into the Botvinnik system. And I believe we have one of the third strongest players that we have played so far. Their name is Boros421, and their idea is to push d5 pawn early. So I might make a move that I normally wouldn't make. Their rating is 1333. They're from Ukraine, so hopefully the war will stop soon. And as I don't want them to push the d5 yet, I might want to try and play into the typical Botvinnik setup with e4. And then if they keep on trying to achieve that position, then I might play queen b3. But sometimes you can't stop those pushes with d5, so... And I believe I cannot really prevent that. If we get the pawn on d5, but basically one of our pawns will be backward, then this could be quite weird. But as we are trying to force ourselves into the typical Botvinnik position, so we are going to try and do our best to stop the d5. So I'm going to play queen b3 here, even though it's not a typical move that I would play here. And the whole reason of this is to just try and prevent black playing a d5 move. It might actually mean that black might try and play knight to a6. So we are going to, black is going to play bishop c5, which is it's an okay move. Maybe he would want to go for a quick checkmate, so in this case we are going to keep on developing in the spirit of Botvinnik. We want the bishop controlling the d5 square as well. So for now we have stopped any push of d5, and black is doing a slight mistake. They are playing bishop b6, which is wasting a time for them. That move does not make much. Possibly they played it because they were afraid if they push d5, we take, they take, there's queen b5 check, attacking the king and attacking the bishop, but it can simply be protected by playing knight bd7. So, or knight d7 in this case. Knight bd7 would be if the knight was on f6. So now we play bishop g2, put complete control over the d5 square. And we can continue with the spirit of Botvinnik. As for Botvinnik, we want to play really like the pawn on e3 and push d4, especially if the bishop is over there. So knight f6, putting more pressure against the d5, but for now we are stopping any such move. So we are going to play e3, as we want our knight to be developed onto e2 square. The only annoying thing that can actually happen to us here is this move knight a6 to c5. But yes, we are going to continue developing with our knight here. Does not need to worry about bishop to g4 so much. And knight e6 is going to probably come to c5. So before anything else, we are going to stop the knight c5 from happening, just simply by playing d4 ourselves. So we will push the pawn forward. So far our plan was to develop the knights, the pawn, the bishop, to control the d5 square as much as possible. Now we are pushing the d4 pawn. In case we are trading, that's really good for us, because then we have this free bishop onto g5. So any taking on e file, opening the e file, is never going to be a trouble for us at this stage. We are blocking any checks, we are protecting enough times our pawns. Black is reasonably castling. We also would like to be castling where possible. So now is the time. Well, maybe the idea might be as well to castle long, but in this position with this diagonal being wide open, I don't think that's the brightest idea, so we will castle. I'm expecting a move like bishop g4 attacking our knight, which we can simply so black doesn't want us to play bishop g5, they made that clear. And so far we have no advantage as far as I'm concerned. So we will do the same, because the bishop g4s can be sometimes a bit annoying, while black would still be happy to get the bishop on f5. And so far the game is close to equal, I believe. Just the way we had to play is not was not very challenging to black, we have to admit it. Rook e8 makes sense, wants to put pressure on our knight. I was thinking originally that I will play bishop e3 here and then rook d1, but now I'm thinking actually to try and provoke with bishop f4. If black would like to play knight h5, at least, you know, displacing that knight temporarily seems like a fun thing to do. And for us then to drop the bishop onto e3. We can also develop the rook onto e1, so quite a few possibilities. But first we are moving the bishop, that's 100% of time something we want to do. And with a knight here, you don't have to worry about any sacrifices here, as you can always recapture with the knight. And we want to be aiming for the push that comes with the c5 eventually, but that needs to be prepared. So also I'm not 100% sure if the rook should come on the open file here, or whether it would be better on c1 and d1. So with the rooks I'm not 100% sure yet. But it definitely feels like we should develop the bishop. And the bishop surely would like to stay on e3, even though there should be like some tactical motives with taking with the rook. So we start with the bishop f4. We might have wanted also to play queen to c2 here. But that's a move that Queen c2 would be like a really nice move, preventing the bishop f5, but I think we need first to have rook on d1 so we can push the d5 when we need it, if we need it. Knight h5, so our provocation kind of worked. We can now play bishop to e3. So now the knight is displaced, he will eventually have to return, otherwise it could become a target of some of our cheeky attacks. I'm also not sure if rook d1 is a really good move, because then the queen does not have the escape squares. So what I want to do is to play queen c2 next if possible. But then again, knight to b4 might be a bit of an issue. But right now queen c2 looks like a okay move. But yeah, first we want to develop this queenside rook. And I believe rook to c1 looks like a move that I would prefer. Now also bishop f5 is not possible for g4 attack to the knight. So that would be dropping a piece for a pawn, which is never a good thing to do. So even though we are not winning just as such, we are having a good position, and knight on c7 is actually a bit annoying piece for black, because now the possible c5 traps could happen. So where is the knight gonna go? If the knight goes to e6, then again is fighting with 4 squares with some other pieces. If black plays c5, then we can lock the bishop with the d5 move. So I feel like we definitely want to move we definitely want to play against this bishop on b6. I'm just not sure yet how exactly to approach this position. And it actually feels like really nice from the perspective of that we can play c5, then get this. All of a sudden there's like lots of opportunities for us to develop our piece. The c5 looks like definitely like a move we would want to be playing. Then we can play knight e4 and get the knight onto d6 square, whilst this bishop here will be temporarily dislodged, but then we are giving also the knight onto d5. So I think we will wait with any possible pushes of our pawns yet. We don't have to worry about bishop to f5. So one move that comes to mind is queen d1. Or actually there is a move that we want to be playing first. It's a move a3. It's like a very quiet move. But before we move our queen to d1, then we will be threatening c5. We also need to see where the black knight, if the black knight goes to e6, then our plan is temporarily destroyed, because we won't be able to pursue the push of c5 or d5. And d5 still would be actually possible. What was actually my complaint about c5? c5 takes, bishop a5, knight to e4, knight to d5. I think that's what I was complaining about, that the knight is going to have a nice central position on a d5 if you put a c5 forward. This way we keep our options open, and since we have 2 pawns forward and they have 2 pawns more backwards on the one rank below, then it's adding more pressure on them on how to develop their pieces. Whilst we were able to develop our pieces harmoniously, they are still struggling for space on that side. So I think this is the most and the strongest reason why I would advocate for Botvinnik system. So now I feel like we can play like a very, very quiet move, queen to c2. Rook e7 looks like he wants to double up the rooks a little bit or something along those lines. The point is as well, if he plays c5, he takes, we take. Then if they take, rook takes e3 and we take c takes b6, then they might try and in between move of rook takes c3, we take b takes c7, and then they cannot capture our queen, so we will be winning that rook. So it's 2 pieces for 2 pieces, so I can still play queen c2 quite comfortably. And now we have a huge threat of playing c5 and essentially trapping the bishop on b6. So again, as black pieces were fighting for squares, this possibility arose that we can trap one of their pieces. And black probably sees this, so he plays knight to e8, which is a fine move. But as you can see, the knight is there like really in a bit of a trouble, whilst our pieces still play a lot better game. So now I think is the time when we double up onto this d file as well against the queen. Black is returning with his knight to f6, which is good, but now you can see that this knight doesn't really have all that many squares to go to. And because that happened, I feel like we can make a couple of waiting moves. For example, playing move knight to f4 and see how white is going to develop their pieces. So this is just more of a waiting move than some move that would put some pressure. We are adding more guardians to the actual d5 square. And again, we might be provoking a move that could be quite useful for us, which is the g5 square, g5. I could have just also quietly put my rook onto e1. So black might want to develop bishop onto e6 square. But we will not be trading any pieces. We are not going to capture on e6 at all. We're just going to quietly play our moves. Because this knight eventually wants to go into the game. And yes, it was good actually to make a quieter waiting move, because now this queen moved here. As the black is lacking of space, they made that blunder that is going to win us the game basically on the spot. So now when we can play a move c5, the bishop is essentially trapped. So just simply by having more pieces lots of pieces in this position, you are gaining some like a strangulation possibilities, and this is really nice that You know, black doesn't have all that many options. What I also see that maybe in the future, if this d file opens, then move like bishop f4 is like literally dropping the queen. So black is really struggling for space. And yes, at some point I felt like black has an equality, but due to space advantage, we seem to have always like a little bit more of that position. Now, if black were to take here on e3 and we take the bishop there, then we take the bishop. He can take on c3, and if we take back with the queen, they would win basically a pawn and a bishop for pawn and a bishop for an exchange and a bishop. So after bishop a5, now after b4, there's absolutely no worries. If he takes on e3, we take always back with the pawn. This is essentially a game over. We have some moves of taking on d6 as well, but there's coverage of the knight and the queen, so we don't really want to move our pawn. We collect our free bishop, so we have a bishop for a pawn. Black is trying to block the position if possible. And we are kind of strong on both sides of the board, but where I feel we are stronger at the moment is on the queen side. So we are going to try and put some pressure on the queen side with b5 pawn. The idea is to play rook a7 and b6, rook a1 and then b6. So if black plays bishop d7, that is fine, and now we are going to move rook to a1. The rook did the job on d file, scaring the queen into making a big mistake. So we are now going to play rook a1, and it doesn't matter whether he is able to push a6, we will not trade there, we are just simply going to play b6. I actually missed the idea of bishop d7, that he can capture the pawn here, but luckily we are already we are putting lots of pressure on d5 pawn, so we would have again these two passed pawns as an advantage in that position. Now queen c8 was played. It's not only retreating from the b6 idea, it's also attacking indirectly my pawn here, so in those cases most of you would know what to do. We just bring the king here. One of the ideas is also to play bishop f5, hitting our queen, which might be a quite useful move. We are still not going to worry about taking here because we have the counter attack on d5. Knight h7 happens, and I'm starting thinking actually about some potential of some crazy sacrifice on knight takes d5, which looks like a positional sacrifice where we are going to have a huge advantage with regards to our pieces. So I feel, since we are up material, I feel like, you know, destroying the center, now that the knight moved to the side, would be the way to go. We can also do it in a bit of a manner of a bully. So that means we can take on d5 with the pawn first, on a c6 with the pawn first. We have only 4 minutes, so we need to start playing a bit faster. But let's not panic just yet. Yeah, and I feel like we want to really give something back here. For these 2 pawns that will be then lethal to our opponent. So pawn takes back, and now is the time to crash through with this knight first, I guess, because we don't want this knight to be chased eventually with the g5. So we're returning some advantage. We are only pawn up, but I believe it's a very strong pawn up, and we might in theory be winning some material from here on. First of all, this rook has only the e6 square to go to. So we may want to put more pressure on the rook itself. Quite strangely, it looks like I want to give another pawn away for like a little piece of tactic. But I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to retreat the knight back, hitting the rook. And my next move is going to be d5 and pushing forward. I don't want to trade my strong bishop for his rook in the corner. I love this bishop too much for that. Rook is offering itself for our rook, and it's actually a pretty nice move, because if I was to take the rook, he takes with the queen, I take with the bishop, then the queen takes here. So this is a matter of a move order. And I don't want to mess this move order for myself. However, if the queen takes here, I can then push the pawn to c6 and be close to end the game. I can also plump an in-between move that is gonna be the knight to d5 again. If we repeat the moves, then I'm going to play one slightly different move. So black is trading a rook, which is understandable. My threat now is to play knight e7 check and win the rook in a corner, or win the queen actually. And if the queen protects, then I want to play c6. We are going to see what the king is going to do. I have one other strong move, and this very strong move is knight to b6. So if the king moves to prevent my first threat, then I have knight to b6. You cannot take back because I have rook takes a8. It's a really nice move that I have missed on when the rook was on e6. Rest assured, I'm not going to miss it for the second time. So even though I am only one pawn up. I have still immense pressure and threats that are so difficult to actually defend against. If queen goes to d8, I have pawn to c6 move and then pawn to c7, so it's like a really dangerous time to be black. Or to have black pieces. Let's be culturally sound. When he took on a1, I could have pursued the queen, but I don't believe I would have enough material after all the trades. Well, I probably would, because I could win the rook there or there. And then he wins back that one. 3 pieces versus 4, with me having extra rook. So, yeah. Rook, queen against the rook, I mean, and a minor piece. So I decided to keep it simple instead. So bishop f5 is already losing the game on the spot again, because now I can play knight e7 and capture the bishop, or I can play queen takes f5 and then just trade into a winning endgame. And I believe that's what we are going to do. We're going to grab the piece. And again, we spend lots of time thinking our moves through. Our opponents spend lots of time on their move as well. They have 7 minutes left. We have only 2 minutes left. So, but I think this Botvinnik system was too powerful. So now king is in check. We capture the queen. The next, we are also winning the pawn on a7. And yeah, the advantage is too big. Black needs to move the rook, otherwise our super strong, that's why we never try to trade our super strong bishop on g2, because it's the monster, living monster. Maybe if the if there was no other choice how to play that without for advantage, then sometimes it's good to trade that bishop, but not always. So the knight is over there. We would now ideally like to place our knight here, but it's not guaranteed that would work 100%. So I think we will start with pushing the pawns forward. It's just because I don't know what else to do here. Basically, once the pawn gets to d7, this knight will be lost. I don't see a safe square for the knight yet to go to. Black can try to play rook c8, but after d6, again, that d7 will be a strong threat to face. And if you have no other choice but to start losing pieces, it's just game over. Yes, black would like to at least give some pieces for the pawn, but that will be then even more so hopeless. King goes to g8, which means we might have some useful checks in a few moments' time. So first we will offer a trade of the knight, which cannot really be refused. And once we take on there, then it will be very simple for us to push the pawn. So now the knight goes for a pawn, but another dangerous pawn is still with us, so This is as hopeless as it can be. And with 1 minute 36 with 10 seconds increments, there's no way we are going to lose our advantage. We can start with move knight to f7, or rook takes f7, or it doesn't matter, and we probably play knight f7 because as things stands, we still need to protect that knight in the future. Rook c8 attacking our bishop, so our bishop simply has to move. We want our bishop aiming at the king if possible. That's why I don't drop the bishop on f3. The pawn c5 is protected, so there's not many ways black can attack the pawn. Rook f8 attacking our knight. That's reasonable. We are going to attack their knight in return. So as long as everything is protected, we should be more than fine. King goes to g6. That means we are going to provoke the king to go to h5, which he has really no choice over. I can go to g4 as well, but we are going to push the king to the corner one way or the other. King cannot capture because the rook is protecting. King goes here, which is a understandable move. With knight e5 we are going to threaten some checkmates already. So far I see mate in 2. Let me know in the comments if you can see as well the mate in 2 if it was our move. What moves would you do in order to deliver the good old sweet checkmate? Just having 2 extra pieces is just too much. It's as simple as that. So black didn't really prevent the mate in 2 option. So give yourself a few moments, and actually there is more than one mate in 2. So you can have a look, and I believe all in all there is 3 mate in 2s. So let me know in the comments if you can see all of these checkmates, and I will let the clock run down for 14 more seconds. And then I will quickly explain how the mates work. There could be as well some mates that are missing. So the first mate is with bishop g6. King has only one square, which is the g5 square. The knight is protecting our bishop. So now we have a mate on e3 with checking the king. Again, the bishop is working well with the knight, the pawns working well with each other. The knight's protecting this square as well. The second mate is to play h4 checkmate, and the last mate is f4. We are going to play it because that's the move that we would want to make, as this pawn had no job during the game, apart from maybe protecting this pawn and our bishop. But this pawn did cover this square as well to protect the king well. So all the pieces worked quite well this game. And yes, we had like a big pressure, and when you develop like a big pressure against the opponent that might be slightly weaker, that eventually they are going to crumble and make some mistakes, like letting their bishop being locked in the pawn structure or behind in front of their pawns. So eventually you will give in, and you can, as white, just slowly increase the pressure in some cases, and in some cases you can just wait and see what is going to be a black's plan. But when you are under pressure, like in Botvinnik system in this case, you are most likely going to do some desperate move, or some move that that is going to be just a slight error, and then some of your pieces may get trapped, or you will just simply be pushed away from the board. So one thing that I also wanted to say as a good tip: sometimes you will build certain pawn structure that you want to keep, like make sure that the pawn structure is healthy, and then make sure that your pieces can move freely around that pawn structure, instead of trying to make some hasty moves in the center. You can see that when I play all of my systems, whether I play with black or white pieces, that I am always trying to keep the pressure on, keep the tension in, and the only time when I move the pawns forward is when I see some purpose to it. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. It is 3-2 for the Botvinnik system with c4, and we only played 2 games in Vienna. So far I'm really impressed with how much tension and more pressure is putting the Botvinnik types of position as compared to the Vienna. The only difference that I can see between Vienna and Botvinnik is that with Vienna I am more likely to get the position that I want, unless black is pushing quickly the d5 push. Was in today's game, you can see that I had to bring queen into support of d5 before I can bring the bishop, and that sometimes I would need to bring also the pawn. So anyway, see you later on, and take care.